When the West Ham players board the plane to make their way to America later today on Wednesday, the only Callum I expect to be boarding and arriving in America with the rest of the West Ham squad is 20-year-old academy player Callum Marshall, and I'll talk about him a bit more in a moment. Now, as far as the other Callum is concerned, Callum Wilson, after losing my head, and I'm sure many other fans did as well, over the rumours, only to be wound up further by various message exchanges that I was having throughout the day. It took me till around 9 o'clock on Tuesday night to sort of sit back and reflect and try to unravel what really is likely to happen over what I've been told could happen. Now, of course, being reactionary, which the way I am sometimes, I put out several tweets as well as Facebook posts warning West Ham fans that Callum Wilson was indeed going to be a West Ham player next season. But I've since changed my mind, and I will try to explain why. Now, it's my theory. It may sound far-fetched, it may sound stupid, but I'll leave you to offer your honest opinion and feedback one way or another. Now, did West Ham make an offer to Will Salthouse client Callum Wilson? Yes, I believe David Sullivan did make an offer, but the offer is likely to be almost identical to the one that was made to Mikel Antonio, and we all know what Antonio thinks of that offer, hence why he's yet to agree it. So what is the offer? It's likely to be a pay-as-you-play offer, a very basic salary, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 grand, something like that, plus a heavily incentivized package dependent on appearances, goals scored, how many starts, how many substitutions he comes on for, and all that sort of stuff. But an offer that is so derisory that the player himself would think, well, no thanks, I'm sure I can get a better deal elsewhere. Now, when Antonio was made a similar offer, the immediate reply was that apparently he had better offers on the table from other clubs. But as yet, we've not seen him accept any of these other offers, which makes me kind of think that there are no other offers available for Antonio at the moment, and that he and his agents were hoping that by saying there are other offers on the table, Sullivan would be pushed into offering him an improved deal. But Sullivan hasn't done that. And I think the same thing is happening with Wilson. An offer is on the table. It isn't to the level that Wilson wants, and all of a sudden he's being linked to two promoted clubs, Burnley and Leeds United. And I dare say that if either of these two clubs do make a more lucrative offer than West Ham have, then I don't think Wilson or Salthouse would hesitate to sign one of them. And you know what will happen next season when we play either Burnley or Leeds or whoever he signs for, he'll score against us because that's the West Ham way. But going back to Tuesday and how I felt when I saw the story breaking that we had indeed made an offer to Wilson, which was later corroborated by the message exchanges that I had. Now, I kind of reflected on David Sullivan momentarily and how similar a situation was beginning to emerge in this transfer window, very much the same as last summer. Now, last summer, we tried to sign, let me explain, we tried to sign John Duran and monumentally messed that up, only to find ourselves scurrying around and end up signing injury-prone, aged striker Nicholas Füllkrug. Fast forward to this summer, and apparently Graham Potter wanted a particular striker who, I don't know the name of him, just a particular striker who was said to be out of reach to West Ham financially, much the same as John Duran was last summer. So what happens? Last summer, Steiden approached a striker who just really didn't suit us at the time. And this summer, Sullivan has approached a striker that really doesn't suit us this time, as in Wilson. But this time, I dare say, almost to Sullivan's credit, not that I want to give him much credit, that Sullivan, unlike the offer that we gave to Füllkrug, a long-term deal on big money, the offer that's been made to Wilson is not a long-term contract. It's not on a big wage. It's a short-term deal, and as I've mentioned, a heavily incentivized one at that. So, well done, Sully. Well, you don't deserve praise for even considering to offer Wilson any type of contract. But I guess maybe you felt obliged because you're mates with Salthouse, of which Wilson is a client of. Then at least make the offer as crap as possible. And then you can turn around to Salty and say, I'm sorry, mate, I did try, but financial pressures restrict me from offering any more. Look, it was suggested that Potter had agreed on this incentivized deal because he would only end up using Wilson as a last resort, much the same the way he used Evan Ferguson last season. So it may not cost us a lot financially, but that's not the point, is it? You know, the point is, why make the offer in the first place? So I doubt, even if a deal was to be made, Wilson wouldn't really get much game time under Potter. At 33 years of age, Wilson has had a great career in terms of goal scoring, but unfortunately a career littered with major injuries. The first one was back in 2015, where he suffered his first cruciate ligament tear when he missed 36 games whilst at Bournemouth. A year and a half later, he suffered exactly the same injury, this time missing 33 games. Now, since 2020, that time, right up to February 2025, since 2015, right up to 2025, he has had 12 separate cases of hamstring injuries, which has seen him miss a further 63 games, of which the worst of those, when at Newcastle, he missed 14 games. There have been a series of other injuries in between. Knee injuries, calf injuries, you name it. In total, throughout Callum Wilson's senior career, he has missed a total of 195 senior games through injuries over a period of 9 years and 5 months, or the best part of 10 seasons. Meaning that, on average, Callum Wilson has missed, on average, 19 games per season. That's half a Premier League season for every season that he's played. So at the age of 33, why David Sullivan might think that it would be a good idea to sign Callum Wilson would have gotten every West Ham fan asking the question, what's in it for Sullivan himself? You know, what's in it for himself to conclude such a deal? And why he might even think a deal like this would be remotely any good. On the law of averages, Callum Wilson, if he signed for West Ham, would pick up an injury or two. And if he signs for us, again on the law of averages, not only will he pick up an injury, but you'd almost bet your house on the fact that Nicholas Füllkrug would pick up an injury at the same time, leaving us with absolutely no strikers at all, apart from what we might have available to us from the academy. Now, even the lame excuse that Callum Wilson is a low risk financially just doesn't cut it. It's been suggested that the Wilson deal will be nothing like what Danny Ings was on, for example, as if that makes it any better. But that doesn't make a deal for Wilson right. As we know, Danny Ings was reported to be on 125 grand a week on a 2.5-year contract. And it got to the point when we tried to sell him, tried to move him on, he wasn't remotely interested in leaving the club, as he knew he could just sit it out for the rest of his contract, earning that weekly wage. Now, from various different football finance websites, it's suggested that Wilson was earning about £46,000 a week at Newcastle. And apparently, an offer by West Ham is likely to be on even a lower wage and heavily based on bonuses, as I said. Would Wilson really accept an offer under 45 grand a week when we hear that there are other clubs in for him? I hope for our sake that one of these other clubs do cut a better deal so that it'll be the last that we hear of Callum Wilson being linked to West Ham. So why did we hear on Monday then that Graham Potter had decided that he didn't need a striker? If you remember, on Monday, the headlines were that Graham Potter has decided he's not targeting a striker, that he'll make do with what he has, and that he'll build the midfield in order to get goals from there. And then on Tuesday, there were no fewer than 3 links to 3 different strikers, Wilson being one of them, And the theory is that Potter was made aware that the Wilson bid was being made. And so on his behalf, the messages were hastily rushed out to kind of suggest that he's distancing himself from any Wilson deal. He's already saying on Monday, I'd rather have no one than have Wilson. I don't know. Who knows? As it stands, despite being told that a deal for Wilson is imminent, for me, it's going to be one of those scenarios where I'll only believe it when I see the player wearing the shirt. Okay, the other two strikers that we were linked to on Tuesday are former AC Milan striker Luka Jovic, who's had a pretty bad time ever since he left Eintracht Frankfurt, and Senegalese striker, who's well known to El Haji Malik Diouf, Idrisse Gueye of Metz. Now, the 18-year-old made his senior debut for Senegal in the 3-1 win over England last month. And he scored 5 goals in his 17 appearances, which helped Metz to win promotion back to the French League One. But if we're targeting an 18-year-old from the French League, then why not give our very own youngsters a chance? And, of course, this brings me to Callum Marshall. And he's really trying to stake that claim for a first team spot. I think Graham Potter is giving him the chance. What with stories breaking that West Ham played 2 60-minute games against Ipswich on Tuesday, the young striker was again on the score sheet alongside Paqueta. Now, there is a suggestion, before I talk even further about Marshall, there is a suggestion that Daniel Cummings might be taken to America alongside several other academy players. But really, to be honest, at this moment in time, all eyes are on Callum Marshall. And after his second goal in pre-season, his decent performance against Grasshoppers at the weekend, he's definitely nailed on to at least be going to America. Now, whilst there are other academy players currently training with the senior squad, on balance, what I saw with of Marshall at the weekend impressed me, and it impressed many West Ham fans as well. Now, Marshall signed for West Ham in 2022 when he was 17 from Northern Irish club Linfield, and it wasn't long after joining West Ham that he signed his first professional contract. Since then, he's gone on to make 39 appearances for the under-18s, where he scored 29 goals with 5 assists before being fast-tracked to the under-21s team, where in 30 appearances, he scored 22 goals with 8 assists. His development has been so impressive that he's since won 8 senior caps for the Northern Ireland side, and he's already had 2 loan spells under his belt. The first was for Championship side West Brom back in January 2024. It was an unfortunate loan signing because at the time when West Brom approached West Ham to sign the player on loan, they were short of firepower because they had several injuries to their strikers. And Marshall looked to be an ideal shoe-in for first-team football. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because no sooner did Marshall sign for West Brom, one by one, their strikers started to return, and Marshall got to make just 3 appearances. And that was right at the start of his loan spell, where he played just 55 minutes in total. He then spent the rest of the season on the bench, and eventually didn't manage to get a spot on, and didn't even manage to get a spot on the bench for the last 8 games. So that was really disappointing for Marshall, as it's believed he had several other loan offers that he could have picked from. Now, that could have led to Marshall losing confidence, but that move didn't affect him. Instead, West Ham sourced another loan deal, this time for League One side Huddersfield Town, who were chasing promotion. And this was another good move, or this was a better move for Marshall in terms of his development. In 46 appearances for Huddersfield, Marshall made 33 starts, and in total, he scored 10 goals with 4 assists. His main role was as a striker, where in those 33 starts, he played 25 of those as a striker, but he also played other games out wide. So It was a good campaign. He won Player of the Year at the club as well. That's how good he was. So that brings us to the present day. It's not always easy to know just which of the academy players training with the senior squad are going to be, utilized even more. So it came as a pleasant surprise to see not only Marshall training with the senior squad this summer, but also getting a second half start against Grasshoppers. He certainly wasted no time in presenting himself to West Ham fans who may not have known too much about him. The way he picked up the Paqueta deft flick, ran for almost half from the halfway line, and with a lot of pace, and coolly slotted the ball home against Grasshoppers, showed aggression, pace, and maturity in his finishing. Marshall will now clearly be given many more chances to prove that he can be the sort of thing that we need from the academy at a much higher level. The squad, as I said, flies out to America, and I fully expect Marshall to be one of those academy players flying out. Now, which other academy player might we expect to see? Now, with news that Freddie Potts and Ollie Scholes have been handed new squad numbers, many fans can reasonably assume that they will now be an integral part of the senior squad next season. Potts, who has been handed the number 32 shirt, and Scholes, who now wears the number 30 shirt, have kind of shown Scholes through last season, playing on the left side of the senior team, and Potts with his loan spell, his successful loan spell to Peterborough. They've kind of shown that they're both ready to be an integral part of the squad. One other player that's unfortunately going to miss out is George Earthy. His ankle injury is not thought to be as serious as initially thought, but it will result in him missing perhaps most of pre-season, which is such a shame because he too would have wanted to demonstrate that he could be a key player for West Ham in midfield this next season. So it's going to be interesting to see not only what other academy players are flying out with the squad to America, but which senior players too. Emerson, we don't think will be going, but will there be one or two others staying behind? I guess we'll have to see. Thank you for watching and listening. Much appreciated. If you're new to this channel, or if you've watched me before but yet to subscribe, please subscribe. It costs nothing to subscribe. All the content is free. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think about the two Callums, and I'll see you all again pretty soon.